Welcome back. Today I'm going to share with you a build that was kind of fun, and it wasn't something that I actually needed around the house, but it was something that my wife said I could do if my channel got monetized. I'm not talking about this channel, I'm talking about my other channel, Random Chess Person, where I'm trying to get better at chess, trying to study things, I play chess online and so forth, and enough people watched that channel did get monetized. And you've probably seen in the corner of some of my shots these metal pipes here. It looks tilted there, but it's actually vertical. But anyway, I built a cage around my desk. And the point of it was to be able to hold some of the equipment that I use for recording the videos, such as lights. I have a 13 or 14 inch light panel up there right behind the webcam. I have an accent light here above my head. I have a ring light over there. And as you can probably see, I have a little headphone holder here that's attached to these pipes. But the idea was to build this cage around my desk. I actually came up with the idea before I built this wooden riser, but my chess channel wasn't monetized at the time, so I had to wait. But waiting gave me a chance to figure out exactly how I was going to do it. At first, I thought about using some of that black iron pipe that already has the threads built in, and you can buy different connectors for it, elbow connectors and T connectors, but I didn't think about that very long before I realized how expensive that would be. Every 1 or 2 foot section of that pipe has a significant cost, and every one of those little connectors has a cost. Some of them might be as low as $6 or $7, but some of them are $10 or $12 at the big box stores. But then I came across a YouTube channel called Maker Pipe. And apparently it started off as a GoFundMe project or something like that. I haven't delved into the history of this company, but they make these little pipe connectors. And they have tons of videos here that I watched a bunch of talking about different ideas, but basically they sell little connectors that you can use to build stuff out of EMT conduit. They have a whole website where they list a bunch of these products, and I've switched it over here. Now, I'm not advertising for this company, and I'm definitely not sponsored by them, but I'm just showing you what I found when I was looking for a way to build this. I had heard of EMT conduit pipe before, but basically it's the pipes that electricians use to run wires through, and they sell connectors for them at the store, but they're not structural connectors. They're just a way to connect two pipes, but the pipes themselves are pretty strong, and that was the whole idea behind this website, Maker Pipe. Or behind the company, rather. So I started looking into it. Not only did I watch their videos, which are, I assume, intended to sell their products, but I watched videos made by other people who had used those products. And these are just little structural fittings that have little puzzle pieces that connect together and wrap around the pipe and connect it to another pipe. And they sell T-fittings, so you can connect a vertical to a horizontal or vice versa, like with a crossbar on top of a fence, except with 3/4 inch conduit instead of those big 1.5 inch pipes or whatever that you use for chain link fences. They sell 4-way connectors and 3-way connectors and 45-degree connectors. And each one comes with a little nut, a little screw, and the nut fits in a little pocket on the side of the connector on the outside, so it won't turn, so you don't need 2 hands. I did have a few of them turn, but anyway, I made a plan. First, I drew up this plan on my computer, which I thought would be better because I could actually get each size relative correct to the other ones. The sizes of all the little pieces, which I thought I might mess up if I tried to draw it by hand, but it turned out to be pretty difficult. Every time I got one of these sizes just right and moved it, then I realized the other connector was slightly different in shape, but I did get this far with my plan. First thing I did was measure the desk, the depth and the height and the width, and then I tried to come up with a way to use the least amount of pipe to get a framework that would have some bars here up above my monitors and behind them, and then off to the sides where I could attach things. Ideally, if you're setting up a little YouTube studio at a desk like this and you have your computer set up, what you would want is some space behind the monitors. You would want there to be several feet of space, if not more, back there. And that's where you could set up light stands with, video lights on them, spotlights, whatever. You could have boom mics and all these kind of things. But I don't have that space. This is just a little corner of my bedroom, and right there's a wall. On the other side of that wall is the laundry room, so I can't knock that wall out and have more space to put up lights like some people do, professional YouTubers. So I was a little limited, and that's why I ended up thinking of this. But anyway, after I drew this on the computer, I decided I was actually going to need to draw it on paper, so I did. And I basically came up with the same thing here, is 6-foot poles in the corners with 4-foot poles in the front. I didn't want to make it fully 6 foot on the front too, because I'm 6 feet tall, and every time I stood up, I might hit the crossbar that's right here on the front of the desk. And that's why you see the diagonals there on the plan where the front posts are connected diagonally to the back posts. And I figured, it might want to shift this way, so some of the weight might be resting on the front posts, and that's why those supports, those braces, are diagonal. In the beginning, I didn't think about attaching it to the wall, but I eventually did. And long story short, my chess channel did get monetized last year, and since my wife had already given me the okay, I'm just kidding, I didn't go ahead. I stopped and asked her again, just to make sure. Because again, this is our bedroom. I said, do you really mind if I put a little cage around the desk and attach stuff to it? And she said no, she didn't mind. It's not going to get in the way of anything that she does in here. But here's a picture of what the desk corner looked like before I started. You can see I have the wooden riser on my desk with the main legs of it resting on where the supports of the desk support the glass desktop, so that weight would be on those supports rather than just on the glass. You can also see I have a little mic stand off to the left with that 13-inch light panel. And I have a little post sticking up behind the monitors with the little accent light above me. And I have another little mic stand over there holding a ring light for this to keep this side of my face from being in shadow. And you can see there that my mic is attached to the wooden risers, where I'm going to be sitting and talking. And the desktop's a little bit cluttered. And I don't have any footage of me building this because, number one, except for these lights that light me, I don't have really good lighting in here to make the video. And also, I put together most of this in the garage. The two sides I completely assembled out there and then carried them in here. And the hardest part I had was over here on the right, where I don't have much clearance with the wall. You can see I can just barely get my fingers in, well, not my entire fingers, between the wall and that pipe. And right down here at the bottom of this is where the outlet is. So I had to have just enough room to get a flat plug back there between the pipe and the wall and the outlet. Now, of course, I do have a little bit of room on the left, so the desk could move an inch or two if I needed it to, but not much, because then it's encroaching on the rest of the room. Here's a close-up of one of the connectors. This is from the front bar attaching to the crossbar on the side there, and there's a little clamp on there. That's what I had the webcam attached to, sticking out on a little articulating arm. But this picture is to show the connector. On the left, you can see the two puzzle pieces that interlock around the front post, and then the little screw that you use an Allen wrench or a hex key to hold the crossbar in. There's a little bit of a wider shot showing the articulating arm holding the webcam out from that bar. And this is over on the right, showing that there's not a lot of clearance between this bar and the wall. And there's a clamp on there too. I've since moved that particular clamp, and now it's up here on this 45-degree angle bar holding the ring light, which is on the cage now instead of supported on my desk. Not only does this put my mind at ease that there's less weight resting on my glass desktop, but it also creates more space. Instead of all these things being cluttered right here on this desk, they're back just a little bit, and they're attached to the metal cage instead of resting the weight on the glass desktop. In this picture, you can also see one of the 90-degree connectors in the back where it connects to that corner post. And this is a side view of the initial setup, showing that it really doesn't take up any more space than my desk used to take up. I just slid these poles between the desk and the wall, and on that side, I'm taking up, an extra inch or so. And at the time of setting it up, I made this footage here. I do have a little bit of video. Like I said, the light in here is pretty poor. Just moving around and showing what the cage looks like in a 3D space. You can't really see 3D in a still photo, but in the moving video, maybe you can see that. You can see the articulating arm holding that accent light out above my head. And you can see how each one of these puzzle pieces goes together. And right up there on the crossbar, you can see that I used some one-hole straps on the studs to hold that bar up against there, because the whole thing, even though it's very sturdy, it wanted to move because there's nothing holding it in one place other than gravity. So I used those to attach that top bar to the studs. So now the whole thing isn't going anywhere. And now we're over on the right side where that ring light was attached. Now here we're going down the right side down at the bottom where I was talking about that plug. It just barely fits in there between that pole and the wall. And there's the edge of the glass desktop. There's just a hairs of clearance between the glass and the post there. So in the end, it turned out that I think the best part of a thing like this is that it's fairly easy to assemble and really easy to modify, because each one of these connectors is reusable. And unlike the black pipe with the screw-in connectors, once you got all those things screwed in and probably use a pipe wrench to get them screwed in really tight and get all the pieces in place, well, then you can't easily take any one part of that off without taking a bunch of parts off. But this one, I can go to any one of those connectors and loosen that screw, and that connector comes off, and I can take one pipe out if I need to replace it, or I decide I don't want a 45-degree angle there, or if I eventually decide I want these two short posts here in the front to be 6 feet tall, I can, loosen 3 or 4 clamps or connectors there and replace the post and tighten those connectors back onto the new post. The pipe, of course, is reusable unless you cut it really short. I did have to cut the pipes to these lengths after I measured, and I measured very carefully. I measured multiple times because I know that once you cut the pipe, you can't add it back together again. But the connectors themselves can easily be taken off and put back together. And as they're fond of saying on the Maker Pipe channel, it's almost infinitely configurable, because they sell a dozen or more different types of connectors. some of which can be used in conjunction with one another to make different angles. There's even one connector that has a little screw in the middle, so there's a variable angle connector. One side's attached to one pipe and one side's attached to another pipe, and then you loosen that screw in the middle, and so you can change the angle of it. And that's what I now have this accent light on, sticking out from one of those back bars, about 1.5 feet. So I can move it, and I can loosen the connector so I can lower it or raise it. And they sell little adapters that you can pop into the end of the pipe that take a 1/4 20 thread or a 3/8 thread. And I got a couple of both just to be sure, and that's what that light is screwed in there with, is a little 1/4 inch thread, the standard thread that's used for tripod mounts and whatnot. And when I decide that I don't want that there anymore, I can just take the little connector off and then that's out of the way. And I do have a few clamps left over from photography days, the ones that you saw in those photos, plus a couple of super clamps. That's what I have the big video panel light on now, the 13-inch one that's right above the webcam. That's held up there with a super clamp. And I have a couple of safety cables on it going up to the top rail of this cage. And one last thing that I did yesterday, I built the cage back in October, so 3 or 4 months ago now. But yesterday, I made myself a microphone boom arm. I didn't want to spend $100 on one of those big scissor type lamp holding microphone boom arms that comes down over the monitors and has a spring inside it, and part of that bar is in the frame, right? There would be a bar right here coming down into the, holding the mic in front of my face. And yeah, they're really handy because you can move it out of the way or raise it up, that kind of thing, but it's $100. I had a couple of feet of this pipe left, and I had a few leftover connectors because I ordered extra just in case. And so yesterday I said, you know what? Instead of doing that, or instead of buying one of the knockoff mic arms that's probably much cheaper, but maybe not as dependable, and still would have an arm in the frame, or one of the low profile ones, but it would have to be attached here someplace, probably to this wooden riser, and still would cost $30, $40, maybe even $50. Why not just use a few of these leftover pieces that I have and make myself a boom arm? And so here's some footage of that. And it's right here holding my microphone right now. In fact, while that footage continues to play, I'm just going to tilt this webcam down, and you can see that this right here is a little piece of EMT conduit connected to maker pipe connector. I think that's as far down as my webcam will go, but it's connected to this pipe right here that's hanging out above my keyboard. And it's movable because it's on one of those movable connectors that I talked about. So that's pretty cool. I can adjust this connector here to rotate the mic down, and then loosen that connector over there, and I put knobs on it instead of the screws that came with it. And then I can just push this back right underneath my monitor, which is now raised off the wooden riser with that monitor arm. So yeah, the mic just slides down and this whole thing rotates back there when I'm not going to do a video. And because I had those pieces laying around, this boom arm for this microphone was free. But if I hadn't had those pieces laying around and I added up the cost of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 connectors here, plus the insert for the thread and a couple of feet of pipe, it might have cost about $30, which is significantly less than the $50 I was thinking of spending on a knockoff low-profile boom arm that would have to clamp over here. I am still considering that. This isn't pretty, I know that, but it works. It's very solid, holds the mic, the cage holds the lights, lots of other things. I later added a little shelf in the corner. I have some clamps across the top bar holding some white sheets down through there, which helps the light to reflect more evenly on me and light this space. That's about all there's to say about my desktop cage, which you've probably been noticing here on the edge of my videos. I do recommend taking a look at that channel if you enjoy DIY projects. There's probably something that you need, maybe not a cage around your desk, but maybe a set of shelves, maybe a small table in your garage, and you can make that out of really inexpensive EMT conduit pipe and a few of these connectors. One thing I will note is that I replaced a bunch of the screws that came with them. Those screws are fine. There's no structural problems with the screws, but I replaced quite a few of them with 1/4 20 screws, which again are the standard threads that are used for a lot of photography equipment. And the main reason I did it wasn't to attach photography equipment. It was because I already had a bunch of those screws here. I had nuts that fit them. I had washers that worked right for them. And I wanted to use a regular socket and wrench on these rather than the little hex wrench that came with those. I don't mind the hex wrenches that much. It's just that it's a lot of pressure on the hands to get those as tight as you actually need to get them to keep these bars from rotating. But the holes in all these connectors were about the right size for a 1/4 inch, 20, whatever it's called. It's 1/4 with a hyphen and a 20, which I think is how many threads per inch there are. And so the screws or the bolts that I wanted to use fit in there just perfectly. Anyway, if I forgot to mention anything, feel free to ask me a question in the comments, or let me know how silly you think it is that I built a metal cage around my desk. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.